Welcome to Wrestling Throne, where we uncover the truths that WWE doesn't want you to know about. Today we're diving into one of the most complex and fascinating relationships in professional wrestling history, the complicated dynamic between WWE and Seth Rollins. On the surface, everything looks perfect. Rollins is a multi-time world champion, a main event fixture, and one of the most talented performers on the entire roster. But beneath that glossy exterior lies a relationship built on uncertainty, past betrayals, and a trust that has never fully been restored. Despite everything Seth Rollins has accomplished, despite his undeniable loyalty over the past several years, WWE still doesn't completely trust him, and the reasons why reveal uncomfortable truths about how this company operates. Let's start by acknowledging what makes this situation so unusual. Seth Rollins has been with WWE for over a decade through their developmental system and main roster. He's main evented WrestleMania multiple times, carried championships with pride, and consistently delivered in the ring at the highest level. He's been the workhorse that WWE has relied upon through injuries to other top stars, through roster depletion, and through some of their most challenging periods. On paper, he should be one of the most trusted performers in the entire company. Yet there remains an invisible barrier between Rollins and complete acceptance by WWE management, a barrier that shapes his booking, his creative direction, and ultimately his legacy. The roots of this distrust stretch back to one specific moment that changed everything. In 2015, Seth Rollins suffered a devastating knee injury that forced him to relinquish the WWE Championship and take an extended absence from the ring. But it wasn't just the injury that created problems. During his recovery period, Rollins made comments in interviews that WWE viewed as problematic. He discussed the grueling schedule, the physical toll of WWE's demanding calendar, and the lack of adequate rest time for performers. These weren't malicious comments, they were honest observations from someone dealing with a serious injury, but WWE brass didn't see it that way. They viewed his candor as airing dirty laundry and breaking the unwritten code of always protecting the company's image. What made matters worse was the timing. WWE was already dealing with increased scrutiny about wrestler health and safety. The concussion lawsuit was still fresh in everyone's minds, and the company was sensitive about any narrative suggesting they didn't take care of their performers. Rollins' comments, however truthful, fed into that narrative at exactly the wrong time. WWE officials felt betrayed that someone they had pushed to the moon, someone they had made their world champion, would speak publicly about issues they preferred to keep behind closed doors. This perceived betrayal created a crack in the foundation of trust that has never fully healed. Then came the social media incidents that further complicated the relationship. Rollins has always been active on Twitter, engaging with fans and occasionally getting into heated exchanges with critics. WWE generally tolerates social media activity from their performers, but Rollins took things further than most. He got into public feuds with wrestlers from other promotions, made comments that could be interpreted as shots at WWE's competition, and sometimes created controversy that WWE hadn't approved or anticipated. While some of these incidents actually generated publicity that benefited WWE, the lack of control troubled company officials who prefer their talent to stay on message. One particular social media controversy stands out as a turning point. Rollins made comments defending WWE's schedule and business practices while simultaneously criticizing other wrestling companies. On the surface, this seems like exactly what WWE would want from their top stars. However, the way Rollins went about it, engaging in unprofessional back-and-forth exchanges that made him look petty, embarrassed WWE officials. They felt he was representing the company poorly even while defending it. This incident highlighted a fundamental problem in WWE's relationship with Rollins. He wants to be a company loyalist and public defender of WWE, but his execution often creates more problems than it solves. The leaked social media photos from a few years ago added another layer of complication to WWE's trust issues with Rollins. Personal photos that were never meant for public consumption ended up online, creating a scandal that WWE had to manage. While Rollins was clearly a victim in this situation, WWE's concern was primarily about how it affected their brand and programming. They had to scramble to do damage control, adjust storylines, and manage the public relations fallout. Fair or not, this incident reinforced Wee's perception that Rollins comes with complications and unpredictability that other top stars don't bring to the table. Beyond these specific incidents, there's a more fundamental issue at play. Seth Rollins is smart, articulate, and opinionated about the wrestling business. He has strong ideas about how things should be done, and he's not shy about expressing those ideas to WWE management. In theory, this should be an asset. Having intelligent performers who understand the business and can contribute creatively should strengthen WWE's product. But WWE's corporate culture doesn't always value that kind of input from performers. They prefer talent who execute the vision handed down to them rather than collaborators who want to shape that vision. Rollins' desire to have creative input and his willingness to push back on ideas he thinks are bad has marked him as someone who can be difficult to manage. The comparison to other top WWE stars makes the distrust more apparent. Look at how WWE treats Roman Reigns, for instance. Reigns gets creative freedom, long championship runs, and consistent positioning as the company's top star. Part of this stems from his drawing power and presence, but part of it also comes from trust. WWE trusts that Reigns will stay on message, avoid controversy, and represent the company the way they want. They trust that he won't create problems on social media or make comments to the press that put WWE in an uncomfortable position. Rollins, despite being equally talented in the ring, doesn't receive that same level of trust or the benefits that come with it. Even Rollins' in-ring style has occasionally been a source of concern for WWE management. He works a high-risk style that produces spectacular matches but also carries injury risk for himself and his opponents. WWE has had conversations with Rollins about toning down certain aspects of his work, being more careful with specific moves, and protecting both himself and his fellow performers. While Rollins has generally been receptive to this feedback, the fact that these conversations need to happen reinforces Wee's perception that he requires more management and oversight than some of their other top stars. It's another small factor contributing to the overall trust deficit. The Shield's breakup and subsequent reunions have also played into this complicated dynamic. When the Shield originally split, it was Rollins who turned heel and betrayed his brothers. This was, of course, a scripted storyline, but the way WWE books their programming often reflects real-life dynamics and perceptions. The company was comfortable casting Rollins as the betrayer. Because on some level, they view him as the least reliable member of that trio. Roman Reigns is the golden boy, Dean Ambrose left the company but is remembered fondly for his years of service, and Rollins is the talented performer who comes with asterisks and question marks. Financial disputes have added another wrinkle to the relationship. Rollins has negotiated hard for his contracts, pushing for top-tier money and benefits. There's nothing wrong with a performer advocating for themselves financially, and WWE ultimately pays Rollins very well. However, these negotiations have sometimes gotten contentious, with both sides feeling the other wasn't being reasonable. WWE views Rollins as someone who's always angling for more, always comparing himself to what other performers are making, and never fully satisfied with what he's getting. This perception, fair or not, contributes to the sense that Rollins is high maintenance compared to other main eventers. The way WWE books Rollins tells its own story about their trust issues. He gets main event matches and championship opportunities, but rarely the sustained mega push that WWE gives to performers they fully believe in. His title reigns tend to be shorter and more transitional than those of wrestlers WWE completely trusts. He's often positioned as the placeholder champion, the guy who holds the belt between bigger stars, rather than the bigger star himself. This booking pattern reveals WWE's ambivalence. They recognize his talent and value, but they're not quite ready to make him the face of the company long-term. Rollins' character changes and gimmick shifts also reflect WWE's uncertainty about how to position him. He's been the Architect, the Kingslayer, the Monday Night Messiah, and various other personas. Each repackaging suggests that WWE is searching for the right formula to maximize his potential while minimizing their concerns. Compare this to how WWE handles performers they fully trust. Those wrestlers get a character and WWE commits to it for years, building equity and consistency. Rollins gets constant reinvention, which keeps him fresh but also prevents him from achieving the iconic status that comes with a single, long-term character identity. The Monday Night Messiah gimmick deserves special attention because it perfectly encapsulated WWE's complicated relationship with Rollins. The character was edgy, controversial, and pushed boundaries in ways that made some WWE sponsors and executives uncomfortable. Rollins fully committed to the role, delivering some of the best character work of his career. But WWE seemed nervous about how far to let him go with it. They would give him provocative material one week and then pull back the next, creating an inconsistent presentation that undermined the character's effectiveness. This stop-start approach revealed WWE's fundamental ambivalence. They wanted the buzz and attention that edgy content generates, but they didn't fully trust Rollins to navigate that territory without creating problems. Behind the scenes, stories have circulated about Rollins' behavior in the locker room and his relationships with other wrestlers. By most accounts, he's professional and well-liked, but there have been occasional reports of ego clashes and disagreements with other performers. WWE is aware of these dynamics, and while they don't consider Rollins a major locker room problem, these incidents add to the overall picture of someone who requires more management attention than the ideal top star. WWE wants performers who make their jobs easier, and Rollins, despite his best efforts, sometimes makes things more complicated. The comparison to his wife, Becky Lynch, adds an interesting dimension to this analysis. Becky became one of WWE's most trusted performers because she navigated her rise to superstardom almost flawlessly. She stayed out of controversy, delivered on every assignment, and became a mainstream star without creating headaches for WWE management. The contrast between how WWE views Becky versus how they view Seth couldn't be starker. They're married to each other but occupy completely different positions in WWE's internal hierarchy of trust. This disparity must create interesting conversations in the Rollins household. Rollins' attempts to be a locker room leader have also been met with mixed results from WWE's perspective. He clearly wants to be a mentor to younger talent and a voice that management can rely on for feedback and guidance. He's tried to position himself as a bridge between the roster and the front office. However, WWE already has established leaders they trust more completely, and they've been reluctant to give Rollins the unofficial leadership role he seems to want. This reluctance sends a clear message about where he stands in the company's internal power structure. The wrestling ability that makes Rollins so valuable also contributes to WWE's wariness. He's so good in the ring that he can make almost anyone look like a star. This versatility has led WWE to use him in a specific way, as the guy who elevates others rather than the guy who gets elevated himself. He's the reliable hand who can work with the next big project and make them look credible. This role is important, but it's not the role of someone the company fully trusts to carry the entire promotion. It's the role of a very talented employee rather than the face of the franchise. Public perception of Rollins has also influenced WWE's approach to him. Despite his in-ring excellence, Rollins has never quite captured the public imagination the way WWE hoped he would. His merchandise sales are solid but not spectacular. His social media following is substantial but not overwhelming. He moves television ratings but doesn't create major spikes. This consistent B+ level of fan connection has limited how far WWE is willing to push him. They've invested in him repeatedly, giving him chances to break through to that next level of stardom, but it hasn't quite happened. This track record makes WWE hesitant to bet the farm on Rollins as their top guy. The injuries throughout Rollins' career have also factored into WWE's calculations. Beyond the major knee injury, he's dealt with various other ailments that have required him to work hurt or take time off. WWE obviously doesn't hold injuries against performers as a moral failing, but they do consider reliability when deciding who to build around long-term. A performer who might need to miss significant time creates booking challenges and lost investment. Rollins' injury history isn't terrible by wrestling standards, but it's enough to make WWE think twice about putting all their eggs in his basket. Rollins' relationship with Paul Heyman during Heyman's time as Raw executive director revealed more about WWE's trust dynamics. Heyman was high on Rollins and featured him prominently during his tenure overseeing Raw's creative direction. However, Other WWE executives reportedly had concerns about how much Heyman was centering the show around Rollins. When Heyman's power was reduced and eventually eliminated, Rollins' positioning on the show changed noticeably. This shift indicated that the broader WWE power structure wasn't as sold on Rollins as Heyman had been. One executive believing in you isn't enough if the others have reservations. The evolution of Rollins' promos over the years shows both his growth and WWE's ongoing concerns. He's become much more comfortable and effective on the microphone, capable of delivering long, complex promos that advance storylines and build feuds. However, WWE still often scripts his material heavily rather than giving him the freedom to improvise that they give to performers they completely trust. This tight control over his verbal presentation suggests that WWE worries about what Rollins might say if given too much freedom. They've seen him go off script or make questionable comments enough times that they prefer to maintain oversight. Looking at the international picture adds another layer to this story. WWE positions certain stars as their global ambassadors, the performers they send to represent the company in media appearances, international tours, and corporate functions. Rollins does his share of this work, but he's not typically WWE's first choice for their most important international obligations. They tend to select performers who they trust to stay on message and represent WWE exactly how they want, and Rollins doesn't quite make that top tier. This distinction is subtle but significant in understanding his place in WWE's hierarchy. The business relationship between Rollins and WWE extends beyond just his performing contract. Like many top stars, Rollins has explored opportunities for outside ventures, business projects, and media appearances beyond wrestling. WWE has been more restrictive with Rollins regarding outside opportunities compared to some other main eventers. This tighter control reflects their concern that he might do or say something in an outside context that creates problems for WWE. They're more comfortable when they can supervise and approve everything he does publicly. Rollins' desire to eventually move into a backstage role after his in-ring career ends has been reported in various wrestling media outlets. He's interested in becoming a producer, agent, or perhaps even taking on creative responsibilities. WWE has been notably noncommittal about these aspirations. Compare this to how they've handled similar situations with other performers they trust completely, offering them backstage positions while they're still active wrestlers or immediately upon retirement. The fact that WWE hasn't made similar overtures to Rollins despite his interest and obvious qualifications speaks volumes about their reservations regarding giving him more power and influence within the company structure. The Shield Brotherhood has created its own complicated dynamics regarding trust. WWE knows that Rollins remains close with Roman Reigns, and to a lesser extent with Jon Moxley despite Moxley working for a competing promotion. These relationships could theoretically create conflicts of interest or divided loyalties. WWE would never explicitly state concern about this, but it factors into their overall assessment of where Rollins fits in their plans. They know his primary loyalty is to his brothers and to himself, with WWE being important but not necessarily the highest priority in his life. This realistic understanding of where they rank in Rollins' personal hierarchy affects how much responsibility and trust they're willing to grant him. The fan reactions to Rollins have been inconsistent over the years, ranging from overwhelming support to notable backlash during certain periods. WWE has watched how fans turn on Rollins during specific storylines or character iterations, and this fickleness has made them cautious. A performer WWE fully trusts is someone who maintains fan support regardless of whether they're positioned as a hero or villain. Rollins' relationship with the audience is more volatile and dependent on his current booking. This volatility is concerning for WWE because it makes him less reliable as a foundation to build around. Money and merchandise reveal interesting truths about WWE's perception of any performer. While Rollins does sell merchandise and generates revenue for the company, his numbers have never quite reached the top tier occupied by performers like John Cena, Roman Reigns, or even some of the part-time special attractions. WWE is a business, and they ultimately trust the performers who make them the most money. Rollins is profitable, certainly, but he's not reaching the financial heights that would make him absolutely indispensable and therefore force WWE to extend complete trust regardless of other factors. The creative pitches that Rollins brings to WWE management have had mixed success. He's pitched various storyline ideas, character directions, and match concepts over the years. Some have been approved and implemented, but many have been rejected or ignored. The success rate matters less than the pattern it reveals. WWE listens to Rollins, but they don't prioritize his creative input the way they do with performers in their absolute inner circle. He has a voice, but it's not a particularly loud or influential one when major creative decisions are being made. This limited creative influence both stems from and reinforces the trust deficit between Rollins and WWE leadership. As we analyze this complicated relationship, certain patterns become clear. Seth Rollins is incredibly talented, genuinely loyal to WWE in most respects, and has sacrificed his body for the company's benefit. Yet WWE maintains emotional and professional distance from him that they don't maintain with certain other top performers. This distance isn't based on a single factor but rather accumulated concerns, past incidents, personality dynamics, and business calculations. WWE values Rollins tremendously as a performer but doesn't quite value him as a person and representative of the company in the same way they value their most trusted stars. The future of this relationship remains uncertain. Rollins could gradually rebuild trust through continued excellence and avoiding the mistakes that created problems in the past. He could also remain forever in this middle category, valued but never fully embraced. There's even the possibility that eventually the mutual frustration leads to a separation, though that seems less likely given both parties' financial interest in maintaining the relationship. What seems most probable is that the status quo continues, with Rollins being a featured performer who never quite breaks through to the ultimate level of trust and positioning that his talent arguably deserves. Understanding why WWE doesn't fully trust Seth Rollins reveals deeper truths about how wrestling companies evaluate and utilize talent. It's not just about work rate or even drawing power. It's about predictability, reliability, and confidence that a performer will represent the company exactly how management wants in every circumstance. Rollins has shown moments of unpredictability, has made mistakes that created problems, and has demonstrated that he has his own ideas about how things should be done. These qualities make him interesting and human, but they also make WWE nervous. In their ideal world, top performers would be talented robots who execute company directives flawlessly while generating maximum revenue. Rollins is too human, too independent-minded, and too complicated for WWE to ever feel completely comfortable with him at the very center of their universe. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into one of wrestling's most fascinating and complex performer-company relationships. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and like for more content that goes beyond the surface of professional wrestling.